Cool. Welcome everyone to the Native CDFI Network's weekly Friday check-in. We hold this meeting every week to check in with our members, provide a venue and a platform for us to network and communicate and learn and share. And we know that everyone in the Native CDFI community are leaders in their own communities, and that you face many challenges like all people across the country and the world are right now during COVID. So we want to be here to support you and provide and have this safe space for everybody to network and share and also learn. And so it's my pleasure to bring this meeting to order. And our featured guest this week, as we do every week, we feature one of our members, actually a featured member, is Chad Marchand from the National Center for American Indian Enterprise Development, and is someone that I think a lot of our folks know, a lot of our folks respect, and really happy to have you here, Chad. Thanks. And we will get this meeting started. So here is an overview of what we're going to do today. Very similar to what we've done in the past. We start with news and go into our featured member and then finish off with some announcements and let everybody get going with their workday on Friday. But yeah, appreciate everybody taking time to take a break. Our board chairman, Pete Upton, cannot make this meeting, so but he'll be here for the next one. I want to acknowledge my board members that are on the call, and I think Cindy Middlestat, who serves as our secretary for the Native CDFI Network. She is on the call today, and she is from Bristol Bay, the Bristol Bay Development Fund. So, and I want to see if Cindy has any opening comments or thoughts before we get moving. Otherwise, we'll get moving. All right. Cool. We'll get moving. So we'll start off with the news. And again, there is very little progress to report with regards to the coronavirus talks. So this would, Congress and the administration were discussing a fifth round of coronavirus relief bills. And the talks have really broken down. There's chance for some sort of agreement. Both the congressional Democrats and the administration are meeting today at 1 o'clock. So they just started the meeting the same time we did. And, but all reports are that they are very far apart. Everyone's seen the Republican proposal from a couple weeks ago. And then the House Democrats proposal, there's about a $2 trillion gap between the two. And so there's major disagreement on various issues from schools to unemployment insurance. And so it's, I think there's a lot of pessimism in the air about whether or not there'll be a deal. If there is no deal, President Trump's indicated that he's likely to sign several executive orders. And the executive orders would do things like suspend payroll taxes. So that's one of the issues that he's been pushing. It would extend eviction protections. And so, as everybody knows, and we've talked about, the eviction protection, federal eviction protection has ended at the end of last month, and folks have another month until that ticking time bomb goes off. Extend unemployment benefits, most likely at a much lower level, and help with student loans for borrowers. So those are all things that are on the table if there is no compromise this afternoon, most likely. And then if there are several executive orders, they would face legal challenges. So we're keeping an eye on that. So, and as always, everybody, feel free to pause or reach and lean in and ask any questions or comments as we go along. Another item we wanted to update on is the Federal Reserve's Main Street Lending Program. The Fed recently unveiled a tribal Main Street Lending Program designed to support tribal enterprises, and we thought that this was relevant to our members of both the tribal CDFIs, tribally certified CDFIs, as well as our CDFIs that work closely with enterprises in Native communities that are tribally run. The Fed held a webinar the other day, and I know we have some of our friends from the Fed on here, and they shared several slides, and we have copies, and I think maybe our friends from the Fed also have copies of the presentation, but we wanted to share this slide in particular as it I think is relevant and hopefully should answer a lot of high-level questions about the program. The tribal lending program is broken out into 3 different pieces. Outlined here, I think what is relevant for Native CDFIs is one, what is the interest rate? The interest rate here is 300 basis points plus the adjustable LIBOR rate, which is either 1 or 3 month. So that is 3+% is what the interest rate is. And I think that while helpful is probably more than most Native CDFIs, their current cost of capital. So I think that's a major impediment here to this program. With regards to the tribal Main Street loan lending facility, there are no minimum requirements for employees, and so that's a good thing. So if you are a tribally chartered CDFI, you should be this should be something that you might look at. That said, there are a number of other considerations, namely that the loan size minimum would be $250,000, and you partner with the bank, and then the bank would retain about 5% of that loan. So so that would be really one major impediment. But if you are a nonprofit 501c3 Native CDFI, which most of our members are, you would need to have at least 10 employees minimum to qualify for this. So that would really put the program off limits to 90+% of Native CDFIs. But regardless, I wanted to share that information with you.
I wanted to say thanks to Jackson for sharing that, and we welcome all feedback. One issue in particular is it's come to our attention that not all Native nonprofits are 501c3s or C19s required in the program. And so if anybody has any insight, please follow up with me on how we can potentially include other Native nonprofits that might be tribally registered or other. And the question from, I just see, sorry to hijack this, Jackson.
No, this is what we're doing. Good.
Isn't, organizations need to go through a process with the Fed. If your lender is interested in becoming one, either go to the Boston Fed's Main Street Lending Program website, or I can direct you there to become an eligible lender. I don't know if they're eligible, but there's a process to register as one.
Yep, and thank you, Jim. So that's Jim Colomb. I'm really bad with your last name, Jim. But yeah, Jim's works with the Minneapolis Fed, and I think most everybody knows him. And thank you for leaning in there. I wanted to call on you, but I didn't want to call you out. So perfect. But the presentation that the Fed shared the other day did have some outlines for eligible lenders. We kind of cut that piece off right there at the bottom of this slide. I'm pretty sure, yeah, Native American, actually. Veronica, you just want to lean in and answer that question? So Veronica's from the Native American Bank out in Denver. Okay, well, I can see Veronica's, they're not participating. But I think that the Native CDFIs at our banks should be able and eligible to participate so long as they're federally insured is what I read. So yeah, there we go. But yeah, hopefully, I think, oh, the other notable thing I think that is really relevant here is that tribal gaming enterprises are enterprises as defined by the SBA of tribes, and so they would be eligible for this lending facility, which I think is something that some tribal enterprises are definitely looking at. So you might want to share that with your friends if they work for the tribal gaming enterprise. Cool. We wanted to highlight a bill that came out this Tuesday. Senator Brian Schatz and 11 other senators introduced a bill they call the CDFI Crisis Fund that sets aside $2 billion for a fund that could be accessed and triggered by two separate types of disasters. One, natural disaster as defined by the Stafford Act, and that would include natural disasters that tribes declare. So that would be really helpful. Also economic disasters, and they outline that rule here, they call the, which would be triggered by an unemployment rate moving southward after below, I guess, the 2-month and 6-month moving average by 50 basis points, so half a percentage point relative to its low for the previous 12 months. So something like that would definitely be triggered right now, and it probably would be in effect for quite some time. I think really notable for native CDFIs is that 10% of this funding would be set aside for native CDFIs, which is huge and really a great benefit. I think it's notable that there are not any Republican co-sponsors of the bill, and in order for it to move, we need some Republican co-sponsors here. So if you all have great connections with your Republican senators, we should prioritize getting their support. So one last piece of news we wanted to touch on before talking with our guest here is that the CDFI fund is going to announce next week that there will be a CDFI fund advisory board meeting. And the CDFI advisory board is a group that meets once a year. They provide input to the Treasury's CDFI fund, and we're fortunate to have Shane Jett representing native CDFIs, and he's also serves as the chairperson for this advisory board. So they'll be meeting very soon. NCN's been asked to join this virtual meeting, and we'll present some some comments. And what I'd like, if you have time, is I'd like anybody's thoughts on comments. You can do them now, or you can shoot them in the chat, or you can shoot me a note later. What they're particularly interested in is COVID's impact to operations for native CDFIs. And we'll be, I guess we'll have more information on that next week when the announcement goes out, but I wanted to flag that for folks now and later. Cool. And yeah, pause for any other discussion about news this past week. Okay, cool. Well, here's the fun part. So our featured member this week is Chad Marchand, and he's the vice president for the National Center for American Indian Enterprise Development. And he started there in 2018, and he headed up a number of different projects, but he was our point person for CDFIs. And as a result, he's been looking out for CDFIs, and we've had several of their NCAIED meetings where we've had a place for panels, and both he and Chris James at NCAIED know CDFIs very well, and they're good friends to us. Chad's a member of the Colville Confederated Tribes out of Washington. He wears a number of different hats. He serves on a board for a credit union, and so that's going to be quite interesting for us to hear about. He's also worked in several different areas and worked at the University of Arizona's Native Nations Climate Adaptation Program. And he's also, interestingly enough, served as a deputy prosecutor and a prosecuting attorney for the Colville Confederated Tribes, his tribes. So very interesting. And another interesting thing about Chad is he is constantly learning, and I think he has about 5 different degrees, and right now he's working on a PhD. So Chad, so we asked Chad to tell us a bit about what NCAIED is working on these days. He's heading up a few different initiatives. They have a Native Edge program, and they have their annual conference. And I think most people know about the RES conference, but if you haven't, we want to find out. And so, Chad, are you there? And can you tell us a bit about NCAIED and what you've all been up to, and really the new challenges?
Yeah. So can I share my? Yeah. So can I share my screen with you?
Oh yes. Let me. Here we go. Let's take 1 second.
Okay.
But yeah, it looks like 82% of people on the call have been to the NCAIED conference, and that's growing.
Right. Max, I think you have to give me.
Yeah.
It says host disable attendee screen sharing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you think I know this by now, and I've done it several times too.
Everybody just want to bear with us.
Okay, that should be good.
So you should see it looks like an iPad.
Yep.
All right, perfect. So yeah, so I'm the Vice President of the National Center for American Indian Enterprise Development, and thank you, Jackson, for the introduction. You know, I just briefly about my background. You know, I think it's what happens when you get a political science undergrad degree. So you kind of end up in a lot of different positions and a lot of different higher education. But you know, I spent most of my time for pretty much a decade within criminal prosecution with the Colville Confederated Tribes, and then with Pima County Attorney's Office as a political appointee under the county attorney there. And so for Pima County, I oversaw about 3,000 first and second time offenders a year. And so with the Colville, I was only out there about a year. I was our deputy prosecutor for them. But you know, I've been hired. Chris James hired me a couple of years ago as originally as director of business development and overseeing their CDFI program that was getting off the ground. I was promoted to vice president about a year ago now, and so I've been about this position about a year. And so some of the stuff I wanted to go over, and Jackson asked me to touch base on, was really, I'm not sure if, you know, I know 80% of people have attended RES, but talk about, you know, where we came from, I guess, foundationally, where we are now, and some of the new programs that have come up as far as what we're working on over the last 2 years. So with that said, so just briefly, we're a nonprofit organization for NCIED. We did file articles of incorporation for our CDFI last July. And so we are an emerging CDFI. We're now operating under the, I guess, language of our name anyway, as Native Edge Financing. And so originally it was just National Center for American Indian Enterprise Development, CDFI. Now we've changed that name to Native Edge Financing to fall underneath some of the Native Edge Institute stuff we're already doing. I'll get into that. But really, it's as far as mission is develop and expand American Indian private sector, which employs Indian labor, increase the number of viable tribal individual Indian businesses. And so some of the ways when we do that is only a quick video. Hopefully you guys can see it. So that was a video, a montage really of RES and NEIs, and I'll get into what those are. But right now, the National Center is headquartered in Mesa, Arizona. Don't look at the map as far as the locations. It's really just a map I pulled off. But we do have satellite offices in Seattle, Albuquerque, Window Rock. We also have Marietta, Georgia, Herndon, Virginia, Tucson, Arizona, which is where I'm located, Syracuse, New York, and we're now opening an office. This hasn't been announced yet, but we're opening an office in Las Vegas. And so that'll be helping a lot of our outreach with the Paiutes, especially in Nevada, and especially building off what we're already doing with RES for the last 33 years. And so it makes sense for us to have an office there. As far as some of the background of where NCAIED came from, I mean, a lot of people don't realize that we're, it's going into 51, I think, years now. RES has been around about 33 years as far as a conference goes. But originally we started in Los Angeles. It was a group of about 7 community leaders that started a grassroots effort, and they started the Urban Indian Development Association, UNIDA. Off that, they formed what they call a Council of 10. Now it's our National Resource Office. We call it our Corporate Advisory Board. Eventually, in the '88, they transitioned the name over to NCIED, which we are now. We've been operating under UNIDA still exists. It still operates under a nonprofit corporation. I think pretty much that transformed into our PTAC section of our program now we'll have, and that's our Procurement Technical Assistance Program. Beginning in 2010, they really went through a restructuring as far as working with tribes, native business entities, tribal enterprises. Chris James, I guess a lot of you guys already know, he used to be at the CDF5 fund before this position, but he was hired as president and CEO in 2017. And currently, over the last 2 years, we've really undergo a programmatic, looking at some of this too, effort as far as restructuring goes, and some of our training pieces go. Really, our pillars, and they call it, fall into the 4 you see on your screen now: advocacy, training, access to capital, economic development. Some of the advocacy stuff, Jackson brought up some of the stuff on as far as COVID-19 response. We were heavily involved in, I think, in the first CARES Act as far as some of the outputs of that. We recently partnered with another nonprofit called Project N95. And so they, as some of you may be aware, there was a lot of PPE product going on or being passed through several different tribal communities, and it just wasn't really meeting the standard. And so we partnered with Project N95, and they do all of the basically review and making sure the products are up to code and standard before they even go out to the recipient. And so now right now we have at least 18 businesses that are Native American owned that have transitioned their old business model to now doing outputs for PPE. And so whether that be masks, hand sanitizer, face shields, all that kind of stuff, we're promoting them in that route. Additionally, as far as some of the advocacy stuff, I think our scholarship arm falls under that. So we give out business scholarships every single year. We also do the Native American 40 and our 40 event, which now I think it's in its 12th year going on now. We also have, I mentioned before, we have a corporate advisory council, which right now has about 25 members to that council. We just really relaunched that effort this year. We also have, there's no really name to it, but we've been meeting for the past about 8 months now, is where we're doing a national chamber call. And so we've met now about 3 times. It's on a quarterly basis. And we originally, I think, had about 19 Native American chambers that we discovered around the country that are now on that quarterly call with us. And so it's really just a touch base, kind of like this call, for national Native American chambers that are serving different cities around the country. As far as the training goes, I'll show some of the videos too, is that some of the expansion we've seen over the last 2 years for NCIED has really been through our Native Edge Institute training program. That originally started up about 2018. We then received funding from SBA 7J, SBA Office of Native American Affairs. We received funding from MBDA, and also as through Wells Fargo Foundation and Native American Agricultural Fund, all funds basically this program. Different funding grants, of course, are highlighted by region, like MBDA, for example, funds most of our East Coast outreach, and there's 28 states covered in that. The rest of the grants are more of our West Coast coverage. And those are one-day, we don't like to call them really conferences, they're really one-day trainings or summits. Before COVID hit, we were doing pretty much one a month in person. And so, for example, this year we were in San Diego, and the video's on San Diego. So San Diego, Washington, D.C., we were in Alabama. We also went to Spokane, Washington, Anchorage, Chicago, and Connecticut to round out this summer. And we finished with Phoenix, of course, a couple weeks ago. But we try to at least do once a month. COVID has changed the model a little bit because we have went virtual online to a lot of our training components. but we still get it on average as far as our performance and metrics go. You know, whether it's in person or online, we get about 75 people attending our training throughout the day. The thing with virtual now, we are broadcasting this all by Facebook. We get another about 5,000 viewers through that day of actually viewing our trainings. But I wanted to give a little snapshot of what the San Diego one and the preferences. It was a little bit different because we actually partnered with NIGA on this one. We did a business matchmaking in San Diego last December, where we brought a variety of different tribal casinos to the business matchmaking to really promote and issue out contracts to Native American-owned businesses. So this is this video. Hopefully you guys can see it.
Native to native is, I believe, a new type of economy. How do we get small businesses to do business with, you know, the tribes, with themselves, with the casinos? Like major wildfire within Indian country, that we can do this. We can create an economy and have that edge on the rest of the world because we are native. We have that native edge.
You know, we're sovereign nations, and when we think about sovereign economy and how to grow that, then we have the opportunity to not only build our own economies, but to build a shared sovereign economy.
I really want to maximize those networking opportunities and those learning opportunities. Go to Res.
I'm always trying to promote, hey, you know what, let's all gather in and we can all prosper. It's about being out there and establishing your place at the table.
If you're a Native-owned business and you're just starting out, the best thing you can do is look at what the national organizations are doing.
What the National Center for American Indian Enterprise Development is all about is creating opportunities for success.
One of the biggest values of workshops and sort of events like this is that you get to connect with other small business owners.
Once we find connection and we remember that organizations are structures and they're made of people and we're in the people business, then those connections help us interact with our customer and our client and then ultimately serve our communities.
You know, anytime a tribal business can do business with a tribe, I think that's a really strong relationship.
A great opportunity for the tribes to keep the money within their nations and put it towards the education and building their communities. But it really does start first with cooperation and with commitment to partner, those alliances. And that's really end to end, native to native.
And so that was our Native Agency in San Diego. Pretty much a model besides the business matchmaking has been replicated throughout the country once a month over the last 2 years. We do get our grant is multi-year, so we will be doing this training throughout the next year. Like I said, I just mentioned we finished Phoenix, which was our last one for the summer about a week ago. We won't have another Native Edge Institute until November 5th, I believe, and that's going to be focused on Washington, D.C. and the East Coast region. And then we'll be in Reno, Nevada for December. Right now, we're still planning, and who knows what's going to happen. I think most of the stuff is still up in the air as far as my guess is going to be virtual still as far as the training goes. But that's where those are at now. In addition to the training we have I mentioned our Procurement Technical Assistance Office or Center. That's been going on. We've had that grant for PTAC for about 25 years. And our headquarters is out of Marietta, Georgia. They've been running that. Basically, it's a federal contracting, training, securing 8A status, and they complement what we do in our Native Edge Institutes as far as our training and outreach to our clients. We have about 500 clients total within the two programs operating right now. Additionally, Jackson mentioned when I first got hired for NCAIED, I took over their Access to Capital or their CDFI program. I was just promoted into a position of the executive director of Native Edge financing on an interim basis. We're looking at hiring a permanent person into that position and really advancing our efforts as far as our loan output probably this year and actually doing that going forward. The last pillar up there you'll see on the screen is economic development. A part of the grant we received this year from Wells Fargo Foundation was focusing on economic development, or heat mapping is what we termed it. We're actually doing 3 different research projects, and those are more in-depth research with 3 different tribal communities. And so we're partnering with San Carlos Apache out of Arizona, Salish Kootenai out of Western Montana, and Colville Confederated Tribes out of Eastern Washington to really do an in-depth dive as far as regional economic development outputs and some of the stuff they're looking at advancing. And those asks and I guess really research behind it are totally different from tribe to tribe. And so we have several different researchers on that project, and that's really the bulk of our, at least this year, is focused that way and have more of an in-depth look at it. Lastly, the video, I'm not sure if I have time around Jackson to show this, but we started a youth focused, if you're at Res this year, kind of centric, I guess, program, you could say. A bulk of our Res attendees, I would say, probably are 35 plus or more that are actually in age. And so we recognize the need to get youth more involved in especially Res and some of our program efforts. And so we partnered with both Unity and American Indian Business Leaders, ABLE, and that's Prairie Bighorn. She's the executive director of that group, and doing a youth actual business competition. And so we had, and I'll show the video, this is actually our winning team for this last year. And hopefully I can get it to play. Being in Tucson, Arizona, sometimes my internet is still spotty, even being metropolitan. Oh, yeah, I got it up.
We are the Tribal Youth Ambassadors. We are a Pomo and Miwok group of Indians, and we are ages 10 to 24. We seek to educate and raise awareness of issues in Indian country today, as well as advocate for our Native American communities in the courtroom, classroom, and in our everyday lives. We realize that traditional foods are so important to our connection to culture as well as our health. And through reclaiming these foods, it is an act of resilience and how strong our people are. So we invented the Acorn Bites in 2016. Acorn has extreme health benefits, and it's been sustaining our people for millenniums. And so we chose to incorporate it into a way that we can indigenize our diets every day.
And so that was an ABLE youth group that presented at Res this year. We have 10 different groups presenting to Res conference this year, where that's going to be expanded upon this year because it hasn't been announced officially any as far as publicity goes, but ABLE is actually going to be co-hosting their conference, their annual conference at Res this year. And so they'll actually be starting, I think, on Saturday, Sunday, and ending on Monday at Res. So they'll have about 500 youth now at Res, and Res will still continue to be Sunday through Thursday. Res right now is still being planned out. We're already doing it right now as far as logistical stuff and agenda. Right now we still plan an in-person conference, but with a virtual option. And so that'll come out hopefully within a month as far as what that option is. But we are still planning an in-person conference next March and trying to figure out the virtual options if people can't attend that conference. That's my videos. Any questions? One of the things that I wanted to mention too is that we do these, like I mentioned, we just had an Native Institute monthly. And so we'll have, I think we'll still have some webinars going on next month and the following, and take a look at our Facebook and continue to follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. But our next Native Edge won't be until Washington, D.C. in November. Questions?
Yeah, we'll open up for questions. And I think while people get ready to ask questions, one question I have, Chad, is your N2N, the Business to Business Summit. Were there businesses that you think would benefit from financing from native CDFIs there, or do you think that?
Yeah, so that's one of the things where, you know, looking at expanding our current model is that we only did the end-to-end business matchmaking. Well, I guess we did it another time. We did it once at an NEI. And that's one of the models where I think where, you know, especially if they are in person, or even we can figure out a model if they're online too, but you know, we have that model there. They have a number of small businesses meeting with tribal casinos, going after contracts. But I think the missing piece really was a lot of the access to capital piece. We did have, I want to say, well, Wells Fargo was there because they're presenting sponsor. They did a presentation there. But I think the CDFI effort, I think, could be more so when we have that. We recently did another kind of, it wasn't an end-to-end model, but it was more of a business matchmaking with Walmart. So we invited, Walmart reached out to us and they had a list of, I don't know, 30 different demands or things they're looking for in businesses. And we connected them with 15 Native American owned companies. And so they did that business matchmaking. But I still think there's a component of access to capital and finance that we could probably connect our businesses with, even more so going forward. Right now, I think a lot of our trainings are more like the lecture style stuff, but I think we have to get more interactive going forward. And that's what we're going to be trying to planning over the next, because our new one started up in November, hopefully get more interactive with more one-on-one stuff with financing institutions. Yeah, good question.
Yeah, do we have any other questions from our members? Yeah. Don't be shy. Well, I think one question we had was the last two RES conferences, there was a great CDFI presence, and I think we'd like to keep that up. Do you think there will be another CDFI panel or something like that this next one?
Yeah, so we're already, like, I mean, we're already starting to do the agenda, and that's already on the docket as far as what that looks like, I think. And for those that have attended RES, like, I think it was 80% that attended RES before. We used to have a business matchmaking event even on Monday. But that was more looking, I think, toward federal contracting. And so one of the things that we're actually going to change up this year is we had roughly about, let's say, 200 people attending that matchmaking. Well, that was out of 2,500 people. And so I think this year is some of the stuff you talked about is like with the matching up with CDFIs, is I'm going to open up that matchmaking even beyond the fed contracting. And so it's going to be like end-to-end for maybe, you know, tribal casinos looking for different, you know, suppliers. It could be CDFIs, financial institutions could have meetings up there and set up meetings to have matchmaking going on throughout that entire day. So instead of having 200 people looking for federal contracts, my hope is to have 1,000 people up there doing matchmaking on Monday.
And I've got one more, I guess, question about the native edge finance that you mentioned.
Yep.
So, and I guess if you don't, I guess can't share now, but I think that, so that's really interesting to, I guess, all native CDFIs is, yeah, what kind of services and products do you think you all would offer?
Yeah, so we just now we just had one of our first board meetings this summer. We passed our board bylaws and our loan policies, and some of you may know Lisa Wagner. She's our consultant on the project, and she's been with us she's the one that wrote the grant that got me hired, and so she's our consultant on the project. And I think in some of the products and services, you know, we're still, I think Chris and I made a statement, most times we get asked this question, we're still kind of evolving as far as what that looks like. I think our primary goal, I think moving forward, especially this year, is we have a number of clients, especially during COVID now, that are needing our services. And so I think we're going to look at our clients right now through our PTAC, through our Native Edge Institutes, and really reach out to them and trying to figure out what kind of services that we can offer them going forward. One of our PTAC, or our PTACs reported to us in our last monthly meeting, about a third of the businesses that we served under PTAC are no longer in existence since COVID. And so that's really concerning for us. Especially some of the Native American contractors are out there that are not surviving at this point. And so it's something where they are just closing up shop. And so I think going forward, I think a lot of our loan products are going to look at serving those clients first.
Wow. Okay. Well, cool. Well, Chad.
So I want to make it too is, anybody on this call, I know quite a bit of people on this call, but if anybody has any interest going forward in doing any presentations and being involved in Native Edge Institutes, whether that be training, maybe in person or virtual, and you'll be able to find, hopefully within the next month, our training calendar. We're relaunching our website. It's going to be launched, I think, September 1st. You'll be able to see all of our NEIs for the next year or where those are at. If we can't have in-person ones, of course, those will be there, but if not, they'll be virtual. But right now, our schedule will be all around the country beginning next year. But we'll see what that holds with COVID and everything. So.
Well, great. Well, Chad, thank you for taking the time to talk with us and give us an update, and really, really cool stuff with the Native Edge financing. I think that'll be great to hear how things go forward, and hopefully we're able to support some of these Native contractors and find out what's going on with those third that are no longer around. That's really I guess it's disturbing. But yeah, thanks, Chad, and
All right, thanks.
Cool.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks for being a member, and thanks for making sure that Native CDFIs are included in the discussion at RES. Yeah, and I think when things get better, we'll hopefully see the 80% of people back at RES again soon. Yeah, cool. All right, great. And we're going to continue moving forward. We just have a few announcements, and then we hopefully will be able to wrap up a couple minutes early this week. So if you're on our email list, which I think everybody is, we sent out a save the date this week. Our annual conference this year is going to be all virtual, so no surprise there. It is a little bit earlier than it has been in past years. And we know that everybody is like my kids, or my oldest kid. It's hard for us to sit down longer than an hour and a half in front of Zoom. So this year we're going to do three shortened sessions for our annual meeting this year. And so there'll be 1 hour and a half sessions for the 22nd, 1 hour and a half session for the 23rd, and 1 hour and a half session for the 24th. So people don't get bored. So we're really looking forward to that. We'll have more announcements and agenda coming very shortly. Want to just note that we completed our first module of our Native NCN Institute. So we want to have, or we will be having quantitative trainings every quarter with a variety of different trainers, but the focus would be quantitative and making sure that we provide free access to high quality materials for our members. And so we'll announce our fall session soon. And if you weren't able to be in the inaugural class, we will open it up again very shortly for our fall institute. This, just a reminder, in case you started your Wells Fargo grant application and you decided, oh yeah, it's due today. So it's, if you're applying for this Wells Fargo grant, it is due at midnight tonight Pacific time. So just a reminder. Another reminder, we have Jim Cullum on the call. The Federal Reserve Bank is doing a CDFI survey. That survey deadline was extended to the 14th. We want to have more Native CDFI representation in that survey. I know it takes a little while, but the results are what we use to advocate for increasing things like NACA. And as you remember in the past, the 2017 Federal Reserve CDFI, Native CDFI study showed that we had more than $40 million in NACA need. And so that's something that, that could easily be swallowed up by Native CDFIs, and Native CDFIs would be able to get that funding out to Indian country. And so that's the kind of story and information that we want to share and want to remind everybody about the survey. One more thing, the USDA has some webinars for 1RD loan guarantee, and they have some listening sessions. What we want to drill down a little bit deeper is we want to make sure that Native CDFIs are eligible here, and we're plan to have a further discussion and bring some folks on from USDA to talk about this in a couple weeks. So, but I wanted to flag that for you in case you're able to make the August 19th webinar. With that, we've gone through our deck, and I want to pause to see if anybody has any questions or comments or any news they want to share. Good news, you know, about what you all are doing and leading your respective communities. All right, cool. Well, as always, if you have announcements, please shoot them to me, and we'll put them into the slide deck. And we're looking forward to another good week next week. And hopefully folks, a lot of our folks in Phoenix and Tucson don't get too hot. Looks like we have a lot of folks in Phoenix. So before I sign off, I want to see if any of our board members want to say anything. We have Cindy Middlestat from the Bristol Bay Development Fund. Cindy, you want to say any final words?
Just good morning, and thanks for a great presentation again. I think, you know, listening to the issues or the COVID-related matters, a bit of the stalemate there. Just kind of waiting to see where we can go from there. But you know, here in Alaska, we're experiencing more need for the fishermen right now because the fishing season has ended, and it is still kind of matriculating through our communities yet too. So just keep up the good pressure. I appreciate it. Appreciate all of those that are attending too.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, great. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Chad. And yeah, everybody have a great week, and I look forward to catching up next week. All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jackson, once again.
Awesome. Thanks, Chad.